While education has enjoyed a somewhat equitable access across India, technology and edtech have largely remained an urban tale. With the advancements in technology and a reduction in cost, edtech has slowly and increasingly become affordable, scalable, and replicable. So join us today as we explore the scope of edtech as a means for learning opportunity in rural education. To moderate this discussion, I would like to introduce Mr. Abhishek Ranjan, Director of Sustainability at Brilio. Mr. Ranjan brings with him 12 plus years of corporate and development sector experience. He has a vision to help 100,000 underserved young minds through STEM education. Mr. Ranjan, absolute pleasure to have you with us. Next, I would like to introduce Ms. Anupam Nidhi, Head CSR at Hindustan Zinc. In her previous stints, she has led leadership positions in CSR and played a pivotal role in Siemens India and the Reliance Group. She has been in managing and leading roles for the past 20 years. Ms. Nidhi, thank you for being here with us today. Our next panelist for the discussion is Mr. Venkat Ramanan Sriraman, co-founder of the eVidya Loka Trust. Mr. Sriraman has held various engineering positions in the field of software product and IT application development in companies like Citigroup, Honeywell, Microsoft, and Dell. He's a passionate technologist who gets excited about applying technology. Mr. Sriraman, a delight to have you here. Next, we have Ms. Sujata Sahu, founder of 7,000 Feet Foundation. 17,000 Feet is an organization that has been working relentlessly in the remote mountain hamlets across the Union Territory of Ladakh with the primary objective to enhance education, strengthen government school system, and sustain villages. Ms. Sahu, thank you for joining us today. Our final panelist for this session is Ms. Nooria Ansari, President of the Learning Links Foundation. Learning Links Foundation is a non-profit that innovates products, solutions, and services for the education and development sector. She has over 19 years of experience in leading large-scale programs, managing diverse government and corporate stakeholders. Ms. Ansari, absolute pleasure to have you here. Mr. Ranjan, over to you to moderate this.
Good morning, everybody. Am I audible? Just bear with us for a few seconds. Okay, so good morning, namaskar, welcome. आप सभी को इस सेशन में वेलकम है and really thank all the panelists to be here on this morning to discuss about a very pertaining topic on rural education and how technology can play a role, and more so in the times like this when technology is the only enabler, equalizer, and probably get our life going, is because of technology and the people who do not have the access to it as in today, and the struggle, the challenges they have, especially the students at the government schools and schools where they normally go for education, learning, playing, everything. So in the next 35 to 40 minutes, we have 4 eminent panelists. We have, Sujata Sahu, who is the founder of 17,000 Feet, joining us from Ladakh. And I see Venkat is in Bangalore, but his background is so some mountain range. But good to see that change. We have Ms. Anupam Nidhi from Hindustan Zinc. She is the head of CSR for Hindustan Zinc. And we have Nooria Ansari, who's the head of Learning Link Foundation. So we have very eminent panel. We have mix of CSR plus non-profit implementation agencies. So it's great to have all of them. Now, what are the challenges we are seeing, or especially in the rural education at this point of time? Not to say everybody knows that infrastructure is the biggest hurdle. People do not have access, and especially children who are at home and their parents may be working outside in the fields or elsewhere, are also not available. That's only probably computing device. And a lot of data shows that less than 10%. We can vary on the numbers, but I think the numbers are very, very of children having any computing device access at home. So that makes our job very, very difficult. The second problem what we see is that the language. So we have vernacular languages. There's many of them, and children basic learning happens in their mother tongue, in the mother language. So that's another, having a content across these languages. Volunteers, teachers, availability to kind of teach from Bangalore to school in Ladakh or Bihar. Again, the language plays a huge role, right? The third element which you want to talk about is how do we make the children engage, learn, gamification, could be any of those sorts which basically make a child actually learn, get them engaged. So that's kind of we hear from the panelists in terms of how they have been successfully doing, and also in the times like this when the COVID-19 struck us. Now, one of the interesting things has happened for CSR leaders like us. There are no local area as such in these times, right? I mean, if I can do a digital program reaching children in Bangalore or Pune or elsewhere, I can probably do in Bengal or Odisha, wherever I want to, right? Because that's the beauty of technology, and that's the beauty of digital technologies, that your reach can be across India, and there are no local area dependency. In fact, some of the programs we have seen, the children from outside India, the teachers from outside India also joining us, because technology have no barriers. So some of the programs, Brilio has been involving ourselves. So we are doing tutoring classes on a daily basis for government school children, where they're joining this tutoring classes, and where volunteers and government school teachers are coming on board. We have seen a high uptake in terms of audio book recording or audio storytelling, and anything which can be shared in less than 2 minutes, on WhatsApp, those kind of summer camps, which used to be a big draw during the summer holidays in places like, wherever we are operating. Digital summer camp, digital apprenticeship program is another way we can engage children for a longer period throughout the week by some activity, and that's has been again a program which has been taken very well by our students. Also, many states have started, on this TV channels, which is kind of giving content. That's the best way to kind of reach out to children. And what we are trying to double it, create those remedial or tutoring classes, helping children if they have a doubt what they have learned through the TV, especially in Karnataka, what we are planning. So there's a lot of such initiative. While we are talking about that 5 to 10%, lucky ones who have the internet access, but there are or computing device, but then we are talking about another 90% children in studying in these schools who do not have any computing device access. So we want to hear about them as well, and during this conversation, that how this hybrid models or offline, online, collaboration, or maybe a near-shore models. I think I'm using more of a IT technology terms, but I think, yeah, why not, having a village panchayat level some program. So I think I will not take much time, and I will straight away throw open these questions to our panel members. So let me start with Mrs. Sujata Sahu from 17,000 feet, and I would request each panelist to keep their opening remarks brief for 3 minutes, and then we will go for some question answers and some more discussions. So over to you, Sujata.
Okay, great. Thank you all, and welcome to everyone from Ladakh. I don't have the background that Venkat has, but I can show it to you live if I just go out of the room. But great to be here. CSR Box, thank you so much for arranging this. And Abhishek, good luck to you in managing all of us. So I want to start by sharing my screen a little bit. And if you let me know if you can see this. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is a picture of the Union Territory of Ladakh. What I'm going to do is share with you how we work and how we manage to bring in EdTech even into a remote area of Ladakh. But having said that, since we are talking about remote areas and rural, I think I need to explain a little bit about what remote and rural means to a place like Ladakh. Okay, so I'm going to start right here. Ladakh is the land of high passes at 60,000 square kilometers of absolutely high mountain terrain. Here are some pictures of exactly what it means. I thought since we're talking about remote and rural, let me show you what remote and rural really means. Most of Ladakh is upwards of 9,000 feet. Temperatures dip down to minus 50 degrees, and this is how most people travel, on horseback, on mule, or on foot. This is a centuries-old village which has stayed there. These are home to sustenance farmers. As you can see, there's nothing that grows there. You don't see any kind of infrastructure that could remotely support digital education. Population density of Ladakh is barely 4 people to a square kilometer. This is another such village, as you can see. Even today, the last mile is still on foot. There are still many villages which don't have access to motorable roads. So as you can see, this is a whole bunch of mules and donkeys carrying stuff to the last mile. This village, this picture was taken, this village took us 3 days to reach. Let's talk about schools in these regions. Schools, there are about 1,000 schools over 60,000 square kilometer. Average school strength is just 25 students. The reason I mentioned this is even though there are 1,000 schools, and even though village may have just 20 to 25 students, there still is a government school, which is amazing for the fact that the government has actually set up this infrastructure. But what do the schools look like? Here are some images of the schools right at the border. This is, one of them is the China border. You can see the isolation and how can I say this? Every village is a few hours away from the other. Most villages don't have access to roads, internet connectivity, or even electricity. This is a typical inside of a government school, which I think would be similar to a lot of other government schools in the country. The only difference here is these children study in minus 15 to minus 20 degrees centigrade, sitting on the cold hard floors. This is another picture of people who actually walk on the frozen river, which today is a great trek. But they walk on this frozen river just to reach the last mile, which could be a private school in a remote area or could be their homes. Needless to say, it's extremely dangerous. The last mile again is still on foot. This is a picture of our school children carrying furniture, which we had sent for a particular school, but the only way to reach the school was on foot. Now, just to bring you back to the reality on this one, most of our villages are like this, and Ladakh is by far the remotest and the most inhabitable, I would say, regions in India. So what does 17,000 feet do? I'll just gloss over this part quickly. On the whole, what we're trying to do is increase awareness about remote villages, improve education, government schools, and we look for ways in which we create opportunities for income. This is some of the things that we've done. We've set up playgrounds in very remote, barren land. We've improved the classroom, as you can see, put in furniture. We put in carpeting and painting. We've improved Anganwadi center. None of these things were ever possible. These villages had never seen anything like this. I'm not, tablets are a long way off, but they hadn't even seen basic play material. We've set up libraries in 220 schools just so children can get access to books and read. And we encourage people to come here, volunteer, go stay in remote villages and teach. Now, digital education, this is what I want to focus on. And I hope with some of our experience, what we're talking about, you guys can get some ideas. Digital education was something very difficult for us. How do you plan for an EdTech solution for a region like Ladakh? And here are some numbers. 85% of the schools in Ladakh do not have electricity. The villages don't. They get electricity for 3 hours a day, which is somewhere between 7 to 10 in the night. Mobile internet connectivity, 4G connectivity is at 26%, which I think is a very optimistic estimate. 2G, 3G is 10%. There are 61% of our villages don't have any mobile connectivity, and this is a reality. Even today, there are villages where the only access is through one satellite land phone, which is used for emergencies and in many cases does not work. As with most rural areas, like what Abhishek said, smartphone access is still a problem. If a family has a smartphone, there will be one, and it's unlikely that the child is likely to get it. And even in most cases, families don't have smartphones. Access problems, like I mentioned, 30% of our villages are still inaccessible or take multiple days to reach. And needless to say, most of our schools don't have computers or digital facilities. So it took us 8 years. We're an 8-year-old organization. It took us 8 years to understand, realize that EdTech is the one way that this education can progress and we can get some opportunities to children in remote areas. But how can it function? So let me just show you our solution. We call our solution the DigiLab. The DigiLab brings digital education to areas which have neither electricity nor mobile connectivity, and sometimes even roads. And I mean no mobile connectivity. I'm not talking of intermittent. This is what we designed for. Our solution should come bundled with its own power source, and it should be able to withstand minus 50-degree winters. Trust me, it goes down that low. Digital infrastructure, the power needs should be very minimal, and it should be one such that the villager doesn't take it home for personal use. should not depend on internet, should be offline as much as possible, customized to local board, personalized. Now, comes to the important part. The architecture should be fail-safe, which means even if something fails, there should be a way in which to replace it quickly, because reaching our villages take 3 to 5 days, right? And we should have access to only academic content. And the most important part was on how do we track what the child is doing? How do we monitor what the child is doing? How does he take assessments, and how do we give right feedback? All of these were our consideration. How do we do all this without internet? So the DigiLab, let me explain to you, this is our architecture. So if I'll just walk you through this is a remote school, the leftmost part, if you can see my cursor. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yeah, so Sujata,
Yeah.
You have another 30 seconds.
Yeah, so this is a remote school where the teacher teaches. Each child has access to a tablet. The tablets, there is a local server in each school. Whatever the child learns is syncs up to the server, and the server stores all the data for this child. The teacher has the option to teach using the television, and all of the system is powered by solar power. This guy in black with a white tie could be the headmaster or one of my team members who travels to the school or from the school out to a connected area once a month. This guy has access to an app on his phone which connects to the local server and downloads student performance data, also pushes down new content. When he travels to the zonal office, his data gets synced up to the cloud, and which is then seen by all of the education department and stakeholders. So here is our solution, a couple of pictures. This is a solar panel. This can withstand minus 50 degrees. We deliver power at only 12 volts. Here's a picture of a complete digital lab. You can see that there's a gel battery with minus 50 degrees. It can withstand the whole desk, chairs, tablets. There's a Raspberry Pi server which syncs data. Tablets have customized app, and they have desks and benches.
Sujata will get back to you because we have to be
Okay.
So we'll actually come back to your questions, and you can talk a little bit about these things. Yeah.
Okay, sure enough. I will stop here then.
Yeah, thank you, Sujata. Thank you for sharing the wonderful work you're doing in the areas which has not been so much reached by other organizations. So thank you. Let me now move to Anupam Nidhi from Hindustan Zinc. And would you like to share, Anupam, the work you're doing, and in general how you see that rural education is going to be, our involvement in the rural education technology?
Sure, Abhishek, thanks for the opportunity, and I would also appreciate NGO Box inviting us today. I'll quickly share my screen and take you through the presentation. Just give me a second. I hope you're able to see the screen.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just take it to the presentation mode. And I guess, Abhishek, my time starts now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. A very warm welcome to all of you. It's a wonderful virtual morning with all of you today. Thank you very much. As they say in Rajasthan, Khambagani, where I am sitting right now, is Udaipur, a beautiful place to be in. Otherwise, before the COVID era, even now it is. But unfortunately, we missed the tourism and the tourists are out. So coming back to our topic today. And our topic today is about envisioning the role of technology, and that too in the rural space, and how it's transforming the education. The picture that you see on the screen is of a child who's enjoying and trying to explore this new world of his, which is a mobile that he has, which we call the Daisy Talk, as well as so you would see some of these things, instruments being used by some of these visually impaired children using Daisy Talk, or for that matter, even Android phones, for use of learning in their schools. And these are schools which are supported by the government, and that's where Hindustan Zinc has a role to play. And I thought this picture would make a lot of sense for us to present. As Hindustan Zinc, our focus has been to enhance the, sorry, I just saw the screen. Do you see the screen? Okay.
It's back now, Anupam.
It's back? Because I'm unable to see the screen now, and I really don't know where it is.
Yeah, I think when you do a slideshow mode, you get a different project. You can run in the non-slideshow mode like this. We're able to see yours.
Okay. Okay, just 1 second. Yeah, sometimes technology could be a little challenging as. Sorry, my Microsoft started. Okay, let me just speak while I will try and plug in. Okay. Give me a second.
You could do a share entire screen and that should show you the...
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, share. It just gives me one option of sharing the screen, that's it.
I think, no problem. We can start, we can
yeah,
share
maybe
it.
let me just speak any which ways. Just a sec. I just want to try one last time. Can you see something? Coming? Okay. So at Hindustan Zinc, yeah, there it is. At Hindustan Zinc, our focus has been to how to enhance the quality of life of our community and the well-being, economic well-being of our people around us. And the mantra is of creating models. This is a complete, if I may share with you, a complete rundown of what we do under education program, which is completely aligned to our sustainability development goals. Very quickly on taking on what we do, it's the staircase approach that we have, where we have ensured that we embed technology to everything that we do, including the holistic program delivery that is designed and embedded in the program. It starts from the day the child is born. We have programs which is very similar to what Sujata also mentioned. We focus on Anganwadis and then look at the 0 to 6 years and 3 to 6 years of early child education. Part of it, look at Mindspark, which is basically from 6 to 13 years of age. 14 to 17 is another program of ours called Shiksha Sambal, which is technically 9th grade onwards. Again, we have another program which focuses on which is on IIT preparation of our rural youth, Uchi Uran. And we also have scholarships for these students across board, and a couple of scholarships placed at various levels, starting from 14 years onwards till the graduation level as well. We have also embedded skilling in it, and focus is to bring in vocationalization in whatever we do and however we work with in the early school period itself. And of course, Jeevan Tarang, which is a very prominent initiative of ours, a flagship intervention, which I would like to showcase a little bit more. What is it about? It is about creating a world of persons with disabilities, and here we are focusing on 2 disabilities. I hope you're able to see the screen. We are focusing on those children who are either visually impaired or having hearing impairment in schools. Around right now, 5 to 6 schools that we are working on in Rajasthan. What is interesting is the fact that in this particular program, we have brought in technology from the very day one. Our focus has been how we could train these visually impaired children. Also, the government has a mandate to give them technology in order to help them with assisted learning aspect. We have ensured that apart from the technology that they have and the training that they get for 3 days, we provide them a continuous training support as children as well as teachers, so that they are able to use this tool and technology in a far more effective and impactful manner. And there are learning outcomes which are also placed very critically, and then they are monitored on a regular basis there. So there are manpower as well as support systems which are present there in these schools, taking care of how technology should be used in the right method and the right way. We also have for the deaf as well as the hearing impaired teachers which are trained on a regular basis, so as to help them use the ISIL, that is the Indian Sign Language, as well as the values education apart from the earlier other learning content that they are supposed to. So we have actually modified the digital e-learning content and made short PDFs and the curriculum there, which is then offline, encourage both offline as well as online.
Sure.
And also, as I mentioned about what we are trying to do with the government is to upskill and handle these teachers so that they are able to take on these learnings and deliver the learning on ground on a regular basis. For our other programs, which are, of course, which I mentioned about starting from 0 years to onwards, especially 3 years onwards, how we have used technology to deliver, especially in this COVID. And I'll take a few seconds on that to showcase what did we do differently. So, for example, in our Khushi program, which is the Anganwadi program, we ran a complete, thorough campaign, which is an online campaign, a digital campaign, Koi Bacha Rahe Na Bhuka, which basically focus on how do we reach out on the take-home ration which the children should get, how do we reach on the severely anemic as well as SAM children and MAM children, which are malnourished children. And with this campaign, we reached out to 17,000 plus families and addressed those children. And this was where the government was not able to reach. So we did the gap filling. Shiksha Sambal and Mindspark. Mindspark is essentially an online training session. So we would work with various platforms which were looking at classroom sessions online, which were WhatsApp or Google or Zoom, whatever we could find out. But unfortunately, of the 75,000 plus children who are there in our programs like Shiksha Sambal, Mindspark, Uchiuran and others, we were only able to reach 30% of those. We tried very interesting initiatives which we thought would make a huge difference. We have seen initial impact, but buddy system where if I have one instrument in a place, other children also join in to use that instrument, couple of them. So that buddy system helped us reach out to those who didn't have the technology with them.
Anupam, yeah, we will come to some of these in the question answer because
yes,
just
sure.
to be
So give me a minute. Give me
Yeah.
a minute on the challenges. I just want to talk about the challenges here, and I do feel, Abhishek, that would be critical for us to look at. One is, while we did all that we could have as a might, as Hindustan thing, we still face these problems and concerns as Sujata and yourself also mentioned. But while I see this is a complete new initiative which we all need to get into, which is how do we conceptualize our learning? And e-learning is a complete different PhD, and we have complete different science in there. Accessibility to internet connectivity, and how do we look at digital awareness amongst parents? That's highly low, and I'm very concerned about the fact that we're exposing our children to this digital world. Have you also talked about creating these social safe spaces for our children? And that's another critical aspect that I would like to present to the audience right now. And with that, I rest my point right now, Abhishek.
Thank you, Anupam. I know the amount of work you have been doing. It's a very little time for you to share all of them. So, but I will come back to more questions, and you can share some of these thoughts again. Right? So, thank you. Let me move to Venkat. Venkat is from eVidyaloka, and your 3 minutes, Venkat, now starts.
Sure. Thank you, Abhishek. And probably I'll conserve some time to get on to the discussions quickly, actually. Right. So while physically I'm from Bangalore here, I'm here to kind of represent all our hearts are across the 237 villages that we've been serving through digital means for the last 7 years. Just to give a sense of it, we thought we'll represent the rural backdrop, and hope that's a bit refreshing to say so. I'm here to kind of represent the last 7 or 8 years of experiences we've been kind of gaining by being present across these 10 different states of delivering digital values, and we'll share some of those perspectives during the course of this discussion. Personally, I come from a technology background in my last 18 years of the experience, and passionate about actually bringing the technology to make work. And it's wonderful to see that the COVID has kind of accelerated and been a point of inflection or a catalyst in actually accelerating this, which makes it actually even more exciting, while we have a lot of challenges to still overcome in ensuring still, I think the final goal remains the same, that is the child really getting to learn, right? So in that context, if I have to give a brief intro of eVidyaloka, rather than me sharing, I'll just share a quick short video that kind of tells about it, and then we can jump onto the conversation. In brief, we've been delivered over 1 million online child learning hours in the last 7.5 years, reaching over 20,000 plus children in these remote and rural villages. Most of these locations are at least 35 to 40 kilometers from a tier 3, tier 4 town. India is a vast country. Someone said it's the keynote speaker is a continent in itself with its own diversity, and it's going to require a certain level of flexibility and diversity in this approaches and solutions that we take, be it a Ladakh or a Kanyakumari down the south, actually. Right? Just to quickly flip about a brief format, otherwise you can jump into the conversation. I'll just play a short video actually here.
Sure.
And let me know if you're not able to hear the sound. Hope you can see the screen.
Yes, Venkat, we can see.
ಸೂಪರ್ ಮೂನ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ? ಹೌದಾ, ಸರಿ. ಸೂಪರ್ ಮೂನ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ
ಈ ವಿದ್ಯಾಲೋಕ ನಮಗೆ ಗಣಿತ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ.
ಕನಸೋಗೆ ಚಾರಿಟಬಲ್ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟ್ ಮತ್ತು ಈ ವಿದ್ಯಾಲೋಕ ಇವರ ಸಂಯುಕ್ತ ಆಶ್ರಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಶಾಲೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಹೈಟೆಕ್ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಎಂಬ ಮಾದರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಒಂದು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಈ ವಿದ್ಯಾಲೋಕ is an NGO trying to reach rural villages so the children can be at par with the urban children.
मेरा नाम है शबीना बानो, मैं हरमान की माँ हूँ. ये एक समझते अच्छा है, मेरी बेटी लेकिन अच्छा पढ़ रही है, बहुत खुश हूँ मैं.
Thank you. Thank you,
Venkat.
Yeah, I'll just leave on this note. I think today COVID has been clouding all of our minds, and we have been looking for quick and hit the road kind of approaches and solutions. And I'm sure I think we as a country has been responding phenomenally. But what I would, I think, always kind of leave here is if we can let ourselves see in a broader spectrum on how, because education in itself is a long-term investment, right? Where we were and where we want to be, I think we are going through a very, very important and critical phase, and we should look at actually the solutions that can be long-standing and actually will continue to focus while COVID really is challenging our conventional thinkings and probably making the impossible possible very easily. That note, I will leave open for triggering of a discussion over the Abhishek.
Thank you, Venkat. Thank you for this wonderful video. And let me now move to Ms. Nuria Ansari from Learning Links. Over to you.
Thanks, Abhishek. I'm so frightened about your timer that I got a side timer on my watch so that I don't overshoot. So quickly, I'll just go into it. Thank you very much, CSR Box. Thanks, Abhishek. Learning Links Foundation is about an 18-year-old organization, and we've been working with about all states in the country on various education and technology innovation solutions. So we were working with about 150,000 kids when COVID hit us, largely with with government schools. And what we did was as soon as we could, go into a survey of our households and our schools. And what this taught us was very fundamental lessons that finally then drove us to actually come up with our solution. What we realized that amongst our beneficiaries and where our children are and their parents are, 86% of them reside in the same village. A lot of them are actually single family wage earners. They don't have television, they don't have any computers or tablets. They have television. 45% of the households that we looked at had one smartphone in the family, and only 42% of those 45% actually could use WhatsApp. And this was really, the work that was done by our teams on the ground quickly as soon as the pandemic happened. And why this is important is because it really helped us re-engineer ourselves and understand our understanding of what we need to deliver on the ground. Being very focused around learning and learning outcomes and learning indicators. I think our teams, Venkat, my team, Girish and all have been speaking to you extensively of your wonderful solution. We said, let's focus on our first response was, let's focus on making learning happen. Let's focus on making learning continuity happen. Let's not let any child be left behind. So we said, let's create small modules of delivery, whether a child can work in a local village under a tree in a community learning circle, or the child can work at home either through WhatsApp or telephony, or our resource person who's trained, who's local. So the point is to hire locally and deploy locally. Basically, the idea was to get the child the learning and make learning continue. And for that, what we did was we looked at voice, we looked at WhatsApp, and we looked at learning kits. We re-engineered learning kits. We converted them from learning outcomes to learning ability. We got in co-curricular. We looked at what are children happening, and this was really our initial focus. And then as the lockdown continued, and as life continued, and COVID cases increased, we realized that we need to tone down on learning outcomes. This obsession with learning outcomes that all education organizations and all education stakeholders have needs to be toned down, because we were, after all, living in a pandemic and continue to live so. So what is it that we started rechanging and re-engineering? So we said, let's start looking at wellness. What does social emotional learning at home look like? What do you mean by safety at home? I mean, a child today is safe at home, but the father or the mother is not earning. Is the child still safe? Is there a calorie deficit happening? Is there a learning deficit happening? Is there a social emotional deficit happening? So we said, okay, let's tone down on learning outcomes and start focusing a bit on social emotional. The second thing was that healthcare around is a whole safety issue, right? So how could we work with healthcare providers and primary healthcare centers to say that we are providing a holistic environment? And then we started looking at community development, and we said, how can the community become a member of the learning? So we know that learning needs to continue, but we know that learning cannot be done only by an organization. It has to be done by the community. So how did we get parents as well as grandparents and the panchayat? And then we started using the traditional tools that everyone's talked about: WhatsApp, videophony, all these things, and our learning journey of our teams are captured there. What that helped us understand was a couple of things. We moved from learning outcomes to learning engagement. Get kids remaining hooked on learning, right? Their interest should remain in learning, not really on what marks they get from the worksheet. Focus on student participation. If we call up a child through his parents' phone, the child should be eager to answer. The child should be wanting to participate. If the child is asked to go to the local community center under a tree, the child should eagerly go to the community center, not want to sit and do gulli danda at home, which could be more interesting at all, after all. The third thing was try and create small groups of student engagement so that we could actually have one-on-one some learning. The fourth thing was looking at social emotional learning as a measure of student health, and combining that with student learning engagement. So we moved big time movement from learning outcome to learning engagement and social emotional learning. And these are the two new pillars that we really looked at. My final slide, Abhishek, is a question back to the audience and to this esteemed panel. When we are looking at EdTech, for whom and by whom? Students may be the final beneficiary, but are they the final beneficiary of an tech solution? Is it the parent? Is it the community? Is it the schools? Is it the panchayat? Who are that stakeholders, and how do we get that stakeholder on board? As stakeholders in education, what is the single biggest learning coming out of the pandemic? It's very important for us as education stakeholders to reflect on this, because if you don't reflect, then we are bound to make the mistakes again of the past. Last question, what education practices from pre-COVID times must we let go? Because life as we know it is not going to be the same again. Thank you very much, CSR Box, for having me. Thanks, Abhishek. Over to you.
Thank you, Nuria. I think thank you for thought-provoking conversation. I think why we all have a myopic view for the current situation, which is kind of good, because we can't leave children not being engaged at this time. So let me ask you questions. How much time we have? I think we did a good job, all of us, to stick on time. So I think the team CSR Box should give us some, extra time for the question answers. So yeah, I hope I have 10 or 15 minutes. Let me know. So accordingly.
Sorry, you can take 3 to 5 minutes, because we have another session that will be starting in the simultaneously in the next session. That is a demo for EdTech only.
Okay. Thank you. We'll take 5 minutes. Okay. So quickly, all of us on the panel, if you can keep your, answers brief. So the one idea which is, coming through some of the suggestions here, and also, it's my thought that why don't we have Venkat, you are leading this charge of, creating some technology solutions, and everybody else can pitch in. We don't have a one single place, all information available. How children can access, right? Where WhatsApp is our savior in these times, right? Actually, the credit should go to WhatsApp to kind of keep the children engaged in these times, not more advanced technologies like cloud and others. So can we look at a solution, all of us in this call and people out there in the panel, who joined us, where you can have one single platform where all this free content, there are plenty of content is available, right? Some we know, some we get to know more and more. Is it possible to kind of create a single repository which can be a great learning source for children at these times? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. I think Abhishek, you kind of nailed it. Bang on, came to the point actually, on how we go forward. I think many people are doing a lot of initiatives. I think non-profits especially reach and focus on actually, is that child really learning, right? While the large scale solutions focus on, hey, have I enabled it for the wide gamut of people, right? So two aspects I would like to kind of call out, Abhishek, while I'm very tempted to share what we've been working on, but I'll probably share it to the extent that it is worthy enough and mature actually, right? So on what can be done is one, I think today the topic as it says, who is validating actually, right? I think if we should definitely, even the large systemic approaches and interventions should get learner centric, right? It's been a very cliched term, right? But if we could ensure that the delivery happens to the child, right? Be it a YouTube channel or that you create a tech platform or you have a whole bunch of teachers or teacher training when you kind of impart, right? How is the child is getting delivered to the child actually, right? And today, I think what has been taken for granted, that is access to school, right? Or access to education, which we said 99% is disrupted, right? Let's accept reality, right? But that also opens up a huge opportunity that today the child is now available beyond school, right? We may not be digitally ready to reach all, but that shouldn't stop us, right? I kind of look at, compare how we kind of adopted the fintech space is a great reality, right? People said, oh, how is that village, that boy in the Uttarakhand hill can actually use, or that man Anpad Admi can use a Paytm kind of thing, right? And today it's a reality, right? We have overseen the overcast of Visa and MasterCard's kind of transactions. So is the case in education as I see here, right? We may not be ready today. That's where I meant our solutions has to be longer horizon and not just next 3-4 months we see some quick and dirty approach, right? We use this opportunity and start reaching out, leverage the openness, right? Having said that, I think there have been a lot of attempts in actually bringing together the content, and there is a lot of heavy focus on content actually, right? If we could translate that aggregation into delivery of that to the child, right? Which is something is what we at UNICEF has been or kind of building on top of what we have seen through experiences that we have learned, and there is top there. Here is
can you wear your seatbelt?
Pure tech does not actually solve the problem. It's still only an enabler actually, right? You can call it as hybrid, or you can call it as physical, or the people aspect that happens at the child end, right? And if a platform could kind of bring them together, right? That leads to the effective delivery of the learning to the child, right? Eventually, there's not a student for that matter of fact. Right?
Yeah, Venkat. Thank you so much. I think, we'll... So there are a couple of other questions we had come, and I will just briefly talk about, and I request each other panel members to just take 1 minute and give your final comments. So what we talked about, having a one single platform, suggestion about the hybrid model, the offline online model, like having a TV and maybe some classes with possibility. And the language is another barrier. Content. Right? You may be getting a lot of content in Hindi and English, but probably not the same what I see in other languages. So, all the panel members, your comments on that. So I'll start with Sujata, and then we'll move to Anupama and Gloria.
Hi, Abhishek. Can you hear me? I've just switched to my mobile phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So fortunately for Ladakh, the medium of instruction is English. So we are lucky enough that we have a lot of content, but having said that, English is not a natural language for them, and there is hardly any content in the local language. So yes, I do think that there needs to be a bigger push on looking at other languages as such, and so we need more content to be developed in the local language. I think we need to look more at the vernacular, very rightly said. But looking at Ladakh, so for example, in Kargil, they were a lot more Urdu as well, so Urdu is another thing. We have to look at our tech solution as one as a medium of instruction, which is academic. And the other is the mother tongue, which I think is critical at this time to keep the child engaged and to keep the child, learning a little bit, specifically in the absence of schools and teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sujata. Anupam, would you like to add to it?
Yes, sure, Abhishek. For us, Hindi is a medium of language, so technically we do not, as of now, face that kind of challenge with the content part of it. But the quality content is still a challenge. As in, content which could be admissible through the technology is something that we face a challenge, and also teachers who could render this content which is available in a proper manner. So their training is also a very, very critical piece, which I think in this whole piece, it's not happening as much as it should happen. And I think they need to be taken up and they need to be enabled enough to online sessions or whatever medium that is, to use this technology in the best effective manner. That's one point. The other point that we feel is, as there was a question also asked on how are you really looking at the effectiveness of this training. So I think that's another piece that needs to be looked at. The content, it goes beyond. How do you connect back? And that's something that we have been working on and have got good success point as well. For example, online testing is something that we have initiated with all our programs. We have multiple choice questions. There are videos that the children send back. There are audio that they send back. There is a 24/7 helpline that has been created for our programs, which are for attending the schools per se, which I believe will help us in assessing where are the quality elements and are we really being able to make an impression there in these children. Finally, I just want to talk about one very quick thing, and which is very, very important, Abhishek. We are just talking about 30% of the students that we have been able to reach out in the rural sector. What about the 70%, the rest 70%? And are they going to lose this 1 year? This is what we are looking at. I think again, we're talking about forward-looking. We need to look at robust infrastructure and government. Without government, we can't do it. It's about collaboration and partnership where we all are setting up models. I think it's important for us to showcase those models to each one of us. And these platforms are important, but the government also needs to be there at these platforms to strengthen it and take it further. That's
Thank you, Anu. Thank you so much. One of the very satisfying things which we have seen in our digital intervention in the schools is that, the girls are more participating than the boys. It is unlike in the, so that's a great data point what we have got. That, when the digital education happened in the rural schools and even the urban schools, we have seen more and more girls. It is like 70% in our classes.
Sorry to intervene, sir.
So
we really need to wrap this up now.
Yeah. So we are just wrapping up. So I'll give it to Nuria for a minute, and then we are done with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhishek. I think all the panelists have raised some very, very, very relevant points, and I don't know whether I can add much, except that I think here is an opportunity that we as non-profit organizations truly have to today collaborate. I think if you look at the country's content repository, and if you look at our solutions and the way that we are delivering our programs on the ground, whether it is in Tamil Nadu and we have Tamil content or Marathi content in Maharashtra, I think the big hurdle that we face as non-profits is our ability to collaborate. I mean, if you look at Hindustan Zinc or you look at any other for-profit organization, they'll collaborate. Even two competing organizations in the same sector will collaborate when it's required for business interests. But non-profits don't collaborate. So I think the one takeaway from this, from what we have here, is how do we as non-profits going forward, if needed to really deliver learning outcomes and be serious about education in a post-pandemic world, and Nidhi was absolutely right, what about the 70% of the kids that we've not touched? Then I think there's a big shout out that we need to start collaborating and looking at different models of implementation.
Thank you so much. I think the content in local languages. Collaboration is the true buzzword has come out of this whole conversation. I hope we will keep on connecting, collaborating, and creating more content and more platforms. So thank you, and over to you, Shweta. Thank you, panelists.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
panelists.
Thank you very
For
much
such-
for the platform.
for highlighting such pertinent issues and asking just the right questions. Taking this discussion on EdTech forward without any further ado to few more practical solutions, we look forward to welcoming all of you in the next session.